L&D project management often focuses on the product and the process. But at Penske, an international transportation corporation, project management first starts with people.
What we have learned through the School of Hard Knocks is if you pivot your mindset and your focus so that your project management process is focused on people and taking care of people, and let that guide your decision making, let that guide where you're nimble and where you're digging in and sticking to your process, you're going to have a much better, much more efficient project management process.
That's Laurie Strauss, Director, Talent and Organization Development at Penske. Laurie and Project Manager Samantha Thompson joined DaVinci's Beth Buchanan and me to discuss best practices for project management and SME engagement. Next on Powered by Learning.
Powered by Learning is brought to you by DaVinci Interactive. DaVinci's approach to learning is grounded in 30 years of innovation and expertise. We use proven strategies and leading technology to develop solutions that empower learners to improve quality and boost performance. Learn more at davinci.com.
Joining me today is Beth Buchanan, Senior Instructional Designer and Project Manager at DaVinci, and Laurie Strauss, Director of Talent and Organizational Development, and Samantha Thompson, Project Manager at Penske. Penske is an international transportation corporation, including Penske Truck Leasing and Penske Logistics, as well as other subsidiaries. Thanks for joining us, Laurie and Samantha.
Welcome, Laurie. Welcome, Samantha. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yes, very excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, DaVinci's had the pleasure of working with you and your team at Penske, and we've enjoyed creating custom e-learning for your company. We wanted to have you on Powered by Learning today to talk about your learning project management strategy. We've been very impressed with how you work. So let's start off first by, Laurie, you tell us a little bit about your role, and then we'll turn to Samantha.
Sure. And you flatter me, Susan, and that will get you everywhere with me.
Good.
So you mentioned my title, but what that really means is I lead a team solely dedicated to functional training, which we define as role-based curricula for all the various roles within Penske Logistics. And there are hundreds at this point across major product lines, including our trucks and drivers, our warehouse management, our freight management, and short-term contacts within there, as well as some corporate functions. So we've got a pretty wide scope. And the team includes, obviously, Samantha as our project manager of wonders, but then we've also got senior learning and development consultants who are tethered to those different product lines I just mentioned within Penske Logistics. And they are sort of Jacks and Jacquelines of all trades from a learning consultant perspective. So they do consult, but they also create content when they can, although it's never as good as what you all have produced for us, to be honest. And
now you flatter us.
This is a love relationship.
Yes, absolutely.
We love DaVinci. And so my job really is to kind of oversee those functions, develop the team. We also have a manager who helps with developing some of the senior learning and development consultants throughout their work, through all phases. So we're a small team considering who we support, but we're mighty. And I'm happy not just to be at the helm, but to work shoulder to shoulder with these folks to get this role-based curricula out.
That's wonderful. Samantha, what about you? What's your role?
Yeah, mine's a little bit more straightforward as a project manager, but the most fun thing coming into this team here at Penske is project management was brand new in the learning and development space on our team, especially on Laurie's team as functional training. So, my day to day is I get to partner with and support all of the learning and development consultants as they are executing all of their projects. But as we're going to dive in today, a really big part has been building the infrastructure that we have, really getting to dive into the processes and help set our team up for success in the project space.
Perfect. Thank you both.
So I'd like to begin the conversation just talking about how your partnership formed. Laurie and Samantha, I know that there's a bit of a story there. Can you tell me how Samantha ended up joining your team, Laurie?
So I unapologetically poached her, but I had consent. We were lucky enough to find Samantha actually in a previous life at a previous organization when we were looking for somebody in sort of a junior project management capacity. And so me and my leader, who rolled up to me at the time, interviewed a slew of candidates, and Samantha just stood out. She was head and shoulders above everyone in just the way she presented herself, her professionalism, her knowledge, and her sort of eagerness to jump in. And so we didn't hesitate and brought her on. And I quickly realized that this sort of junior PM capacity that she was in was not really serving her, that she had very quickly outgrown her role. She was a shooting star. So when I had the opportunity to come on to Penske, I spoke with my leader at that moment, and he said, well, you've got this open role on your team for sort of a training coordinator position. And I said, nope, that's going to be a project manager, and I need Samantha. And so I reached out to her leader, got her blessing, and basically dragged her kicking and screaming onto my current team in a more senior project management role.
I love that.
Which I'm sure you loved, Samantha, right?
Very, very happy to be on the team.
Yes. And we love working with Samantha. I think you and I are peas in a pod, Samantha, when it comes to project management. We work really well together. But getting down to it a little bit in more detail, when we talk about project management, obviously there's so many different types of approaches. There's, many types of certifications and trainings and ideas out there about the right way to do things. But I know you've customized and sort of developed your own process, your own set of tools for project management that's really specific to your work, right? To the L&D space. Can you tell us a little bit about your approach?
Absolutely. And you're completely right, Beth. We're two peas in a pod. And I think why we are able to work so seamlessly together is, unlike a traditional PM, both of us come from that L&D space. We have experience working as an instructional designer. We're familiar with the different challenges that they might encounter. So that was really important as Laurie and I looked to build our PM process. So if you try to take a typical project management approach, whether it's agile or waterfall, there's going to be different challenges that has. In the learning and development space, as we all know, things are continuously shifting, right? So if you have a super rigid approach, it's going to be very difficult. And honestly, it's going to be pretty frustrating for your project partners. It's not something that you can force a cookie cutter approach into. So we have really tried to customize every step of the way to how we can best support our consultants while also meeting the customer needs. So the biggest thing that we have really kind of sprinkled from step one to the end is our ability to adapt and customize our process to that project itself and the project team. We definitely have guidance and structure of how that overall execution is going to look, but we really build that space into the process so that we aren't stuck. Sometimes if you do have a really, really rigid approach, some people almost get in that feeling where like, hold on, I don't see this in my process. How am I going to handle this situation? So we really want to make sure that our entire team is set up successfully to have the tools when things do shift. One of the most common things in the learning and development space is your scope is going to change. Your requests, your priorities, the budget, the resources, right? The list goes on and on. So really just being able to have things in place to help us adapt as we need to, but really also focusing on where do we want to have a little bit more of that rigidity. So what elements aren't going to change? So for example, regardless of what team we're partnering with or which project we're working on, we will always have things like a project charter that's going to help with the role clarity and project alignment. We're always going to have notes and action items on all of our meetings to make sure that everyone is really clear on where we landed. We're going to have project plans. We're going to have the same overall flow of our process, but it may look different of how you get from A to B, project to project.
Absolutely. I mean, the two things, Sam, that I hear is, rigidity in some sense, right? In terms of maybe templates or approach or documents, but then obviously flexibility as well in terms of project specifics and, business needs or, requests that might come in and kind of throw you off. You're ready. right? You're ready for that stuff.
Absolutely.
So Laurie, do you want to speak a little bit to that balance and how you achieve that?
Boy, do I. Thank you for tapping me in. I'm over here just like
we're chomping at the bit, ready to get in here.
I couldn't wait. So one of the things I just wanted to add, and I'll get to your question, Beth, but I just want to make sure everyone is clear that this was not a process that we came equipped with overnight. I mean, we weren't born knowing that we needed to have this sort of agile, and I don't mean agile in the literal sense of agile. I mean it in the true sense of the word, not the actual process. We needed to be nimble. How's that? That won't be as confusing. We needed to be nimble in our approach because at our previous organization, we were on that team together. We had a more rigid approach. We modeled ourselves after sort of an internal embedded consultancy, and we came to our partners and said, this is how we work, and you will fold into this process. And it didn't seem to matter the scope of the project, the timeline. We were sticking to our process because we thought we could take the opportunity to educate folks and evangelize on the importance of process, and boy, did that blow up in our faces. Sometimes folks just didn't have the patience for that. They didn't always understand the value. And sometimes in business, people need you to run, and they need to see that you can meet the moment. One of my favorite mantras for my team is, we are trees in the wind around here, right? We're just a swaying back and forth. Because, for example, if a senior executive, this is not hypothetical at all, if a senior executive pops up and waves a big red flag in the air and says, hey, we need this training video and we need it in 2 weeks. And this is your new priority, because our priorities are set by the business, not by us as L&D professionals. We can't say, okay, well, we'll need to put this through our intake. We'll need to make sure that we get this on a project charter, a project plan. We're going to have a kickoff call, like all the pieces of a project where we have the luxury of time to operate. We have to start by pulling everybody in a room together and saying, how can we streamline this? What pieces are non-negotiable to make sure, as Samantha said, we have that alignment, but what pieces can we customize or take out altogether so that we can run and do quality work? So it's a constant series of negotiations, both internally on my team with Samantha being the leader of all these processes, and externally with our partners to understand what the need is. Because if you're not able to meet that moment with them over and over and over again, they just stop asking for your business.
That's a good lesson for everyone.
Absolutely. And I've always been impressed in meetings with you, Laurie, and you, Samantha, where there is a balancing act in every conversation, right? It's what's the blue skies version, right? Like, what can we do? How can we be creative? How can we meet the need? But also, what's the reality of the time constraints? What's the reality of the business need? What's the reality of our, how efficient we need to be, right? Like there's both all the time. So it's the negotiation of that is sort of, sounds to me like where you find that process that you've customized and built. So one word that's very important with project management, we all know, is efficiency. We're always trying to find ways to be more efficient in our work, in our workflow, and of course in communication. Nobody wants a 10-page email. So how does your system make L&D work more efficient?
Yeah, that's definitely something we are always striving to improve on. And, I think that's something, I don't think you could ever be perfect at it, right? But the three main buckets, I would say, that we really try to focus on to drive efficiency for our team would be within that open communication, automation, and consistency. One of the biggest things that can really slow a project down is unclear expectations and poor alignment across project partners. If everyone's running in their own direction, which is very, very common, it can be very difficult to get to that finish line with a solid product. So we really try to get ahead of this as much as we can. And we fully believe in upfront and open communication with all of our project partners. We don't ever want anything to be a secret or for them to not be aware of what is going on. And my motto that I fully believe in, and my team is probably sick of hearing me say, is slow down to speed up. I say it over and over and over again. It's so easy in this world, especially like Laurie's saying, you get a lot of requests that have urgency. So it's very, very easy to just start running. However, you need to slow down in order to be to reach that point where you can speed up. It's a very reactive world that we live in. So as much as we can set ourselves up for some proactive, it's going to help. You're never going to be able to eliminate all of the roadblocks or challenges, but the more you can lower maybe the risk for it or the likelihood that it's going to come, or even just better prepare your team to handle it, it's going to help have a much smoother transition throughout the project. So through our standardized processes and utilizing work management systems like Smartsheet, which I can get into a little bit more. But when you use a system like that, there really should never be any surprises throughout the project, whether that's internally or with your project partners. So we share all of our project plans, our dashboards, our project information with our partners so they can have real-time visibility into the status of the project. This really helps with the alignment, but it also helps eliminate the need for extra meetings or emails. You know, it's very common, right? Where you get a Teams message or an email. Hey, where are you at with this? Who is working on what? What's the due date? But if you have that visibility and you have infrastructure in place where those stakeholders can go see that in real time, it's so much quicker for everybody. And it really removes a lot of that back and forth. Again, the more proactive and clear we can be, hopefully the more harmonious that project is going to be. And that leads into the automation piece. We really strive to automate wherever and whenever we can. I mentioned Smartsheet. There's a ton of different tools and softwares available in the project management space. We have found Smartsheet works the best for our team. It's a fairly simple tool to use, so it doesn't require us to do a lot of training or upfront communication with people. You pretty much can send them a URL and they can navigate within it. So that's huge when you are working with people across all different teams. But we really try to utilize that to help drive efficiency throughout our process wherever we can. We use it for everything from our priorities to our intake, project plans, data collection, dashboards, reporting, design. I mean, we use it across the board. And what we have found is by having as much as we can in one platform, it allows for real-time automated reporting at an individual project level, all the way up to portfolio-wide insight. So when we are getting asked to do report outs or status calls for our whole team, we have that data right there. We aren't trying to scramble and pull everything together. So that alone significantly can free up time and avoid having to manually search for, merge data, build reports, extra meetings. The list goes on. And the other thing that's really nice about having it all in one platform is it helps with data management and allows that project information to live in one place. So another challenge in the learning and development space is nothing is going to stay exactly how it is today, right? In 6 months, a system's going to change or a role's going to change. So we have to be prepared to make those updates when it's needed. And by having everything in Smartsheet, when that time comes, we can quickly go right back into that project folder and we have everything we need. So we're not sitting there scrambling. Okay, where is that file? Where is that charter? What were we initially working on? Who worked on that project? Everything is just right there at our fingertips. So the automation is key. The more you can free up your time to spend it on what really you should be doing instead of just living on the back end of your computer, I think that's probably one of the biggest things.
I really appreciate so many of the points you're making. I mean, this is a wonderful tutorial on how to project manage the right way, right? Like this idea of automating what you can, but being consistent in how you use it. I mean, tools are only as good as their use, right? And it sounds like you found a way to keep everything in this platform, make sure everybody and everything is in there. And that I'm sure takes some time, right? The slow down to speed up method. You've got to consistently come back to these tools, these expectations, this type of communication to get everybody on board. And then the payoff comes. I'm curious about how you handle working with the SMEs. I mean, that's a huge part of project management, right? Is finding ways to communicate with our subject matter experts or SMEs, as we call them, when we're developing learning tools and solutions. Is this something you've given some thought to in terms of your project management strategy? And this could be for either Samantha or Laurie. I know this is a big topic and it's worth some discussion.
Boy, have we. I mean, Samantha mentioned a litany of all the variables that can kind of derail a project or put it at risk. I mean, L&D projects have so many dependencies, and more often than not, we're all at the mercy of these very, very busy subject matter experts. This is not their day job, right? This is something that maybe you're lucky enough to have somebody who's an enthusiast and raised their hand and said, ooh, pick me. I want to help with your project. But more often than not, these people are voluntold to serve as your subject matter expert. And so the beliefs and attitudes that they're bringing to the project may not be what you would want them to be. And so we anticipate that. And I think it's really important to note, as Samantha mentions all the different tools and processes and automations that she's built for us, I think all of that is amazing, and it does allow for a streamlining of things, and all of that is important. And this connects to this idea of how we partner with SMEs and how we work efficiently. Our process is one of the things that I think makes it different from other project management approaches, is that often a project management model or method is really focused on process and product, which makes sense. What we have learned through the school of hard knocks over and over and over again is if you pivot your mindset and your focus so that your project management process is focused on people and taking care of people, and let that guide your decision making, let that guide where you're nimble and where you're digging in and sticking to your process, you're going to have a much better, much more efficient project management process. So when Samantha talks about visibility and eliminating emails and meetings, that's not just because that enables us to go faster and nobody wants an email, although those things are true. It's because we're sitting there thinking about the people who are working with us and trying to anticipate all of those beliefs and attitudes that come in with, I don't have time for this. I don't understand what my role is. This is not my day job. And so when we engage with SMEs, we think about them the entire way, from SME selection, if we have a voice, if we have a seat at that table, talking about, hey, let's not overuse the same folks again and again and again. Let's make sure we get a diverse group of folks from a tenure perspective. Let's not just pick training champions, but let's pick people who maybe represent sort of folks who are not enthusiastic about learning and development, so that we can make sure that we're getting a good cross-section of folks and hopefully turn them into believers along the way once they understand what our process is like. Samantha mentioned kickoff meetings. Those are designed really more for SMEs than anybody else, right? Samantha opens up every kickoff call covering the exact same material in the exact same amazing way every time with, here's who I am. Here's everybody on the call. You're a SME. Here is your role. This is what the project is. This is about the time commitment that you can expect. Here's the strategic points at which we will involve you. Let's find out what the best way is to get with you and what you can expect going forward. And don't worry, we're going to send out notes. We're going to send out action items. We're going to take care of everything, right? All you have to do is just let us know if you're unable to make a meeting or make a deadline, and we will work with you. And even that is up for negotiation, because Samantha, she has a nickname around these parts. We call her the Velvet Hammer. She has a way of politely harassing our SMEs, because again, we understand this is not their primary responsibility. This is in addition to what they do every day. And so we want to be sympathetic to that. And that again comes into, we need to be nimble with our process. We can give them a deadline, and we always do. And we try to be cognizant of collisions or things going on in their world. And if we get close to that deadline and it's been radio silent, Samantha's going to reach out as that Velvet Hammer and say, hey, knock, knock, knock. We know you're busy. Please let us know when you might be able to get us thing that you owe us.
That's amazing, because you're setting your SME up for success, but also your project up for success. And I bet they want to come back and work with you the next time because of that process you have in place.
I am proud to report we have some repeat customers thinking of starting a punch card loyalty program. Yeah, they do enjoy working with us because of that. And it's the whole team, right? It's not just Samantha. It's not just me. The learning consultants, they have to be bought into this process as well. And there's got to be a handoff from Samantha to the consultant and then back to Samantha to wrap that meeting and make sure everybody's clear before we move on. And on top of that, it's not lost on me the irony of, hey, we're a learning and development team. Anything that we would do in support of a learner is what we should do in support of a SME folding into our process because they are learning us. So setting, what is this? Why am I here? What do I get out of it? How long is it going to take? What does success look like? What happens next? All those questions you try to answer for your learners right off the bat to alleviate that anxiety and calibrate expectations. We should be doing that for SMEs.
That's really interesting, Laurie, because what I'm hearing too is it's almost like a values-based approach to project management, which I don't know that I've ever really thought of it that way. Like people focus, like that's a value, right? Like that's it's like this idea of taking care of people as being one of the underpinnings of your project management approach it's really, really fascinating. And it sounds like it gets awesome results.
Well, the velvet hammer helps. But here, I will say this, right? Samantha is a unicorn. I fully acknowledge that. And that's why I needed her on this team. She has that L&D background. She has that project management muscle. She's an incredible communicator. She's also, I want to be very clear, Samantha's not a task manager or project police, although sometimes people internally feel that way. She gets results. She is a consultant in her own right for process efficiencies and for communication. The team go to her oftentimes before they come to me or their manager on our team to ask for guidance on the best way to engage a SME, to send a communication, sometimes to get feedback on their work because she has that L&D expertise. She is a thought partner to me and a huge supporter of internal team members and external project partners. And all that stated, I have to say this. I understand it is a luxury to have a dedicated project manager on this team. And on top of that, it's an exponential luxury to have Samantha in that role. I've been on learning and development teams where you don't have a project manager. And if you do, they're not Samantha. And I just want to be clear that it's amazing if you have somebody on your team who can wield these tools and wield that velvet hammer and be as amazing as she is, but you don't have to have a dedicated PM or somebody as amazing as Samantha to take at least pieces of this to fold into your process. So if you're lacking in project plan and visibility into that project plan, maybe start there. Or if you're like, gosh, we don't have project charters, or we don't even have a standard process for kickoff calls to clarify expectations with SMEs, I would say pick one of those things and run with it and start building efficiencies. And if you are a leader and you recognize that someone on your team has a natural propensity for being organized, managing their own projects, you see them as a leader in this space, give them this as a stretch role. Pull them in as your thought partner in executing on this and make them a co-pilot for building these efficiencies onto your team, because this really is in service to everyone.
That's great advice.
I know that you have a process and, we've talked about the fact that you have to be automated, consistent, but also flexible. So how often do you review and adjust your process? Do you look at it as a whole, quarterly or something like that? Or do you look at certain pieces on any kind of schedule? Like I would imagine that reviewing and adjusting all of these things is also something that you're constantly doing to keep up with your environment and best practices. And of course, the changing world of learning and development, AI, there's so many things, right? So how often does your team review and adjust?
So yes to everything. We do have formal scheduled quarterly check-ins, and those are really a good chunk of time completely devoted to let's dive into the process. We usually tend to focus those more on anything new that has been implemented or updated in that quarter, but we always leave time for feedback, questions, comments, or even brainstorming on the overall process. So we do have that built in and we stick with it. However, we are very, very lucky that Laurie has created a culture on our team where we are very open with each other. We have collaboration. There's a lot of safety and trust. So nobody ever feels like they have to wait for that quarterly check-in. Whether it's a regular project touch base, I have weekly touch bases with all of the consultants for their projects, or our team meetings that we have, or just an offhand conversation that may come up. We always want to make sure that the consultants feel comfortable and able to come to us in the moment. We don't want someone to stick with something for 2-3 months if it's not working, right? We want to be able to adjust and meet the moment. So we really try to be open and ask for that feedback, especially if we have implemented something fairly new. For example, a design document was recently rolled out. I'm not going to wait until the end of Q2 to ask someone, hey, how has that been working for you? The very first time they go through it, we're going to have that open conversation of, hey, how did that feel? Was it helpful? Mm-hmm. Where did you struggle? Let's make sure that we are in this together. And the other thing that Laurie has created on our team that I have seen be extremely helpful is we love to brainstorm and collaborate together. So after we roll something new out, we will oftentimes see the consultants hop on calls together or say, hey, it's my first time using a project charter. For anyone that has used this before, can you help me prepare? Can you walk me through how you used it? So we definitely lean on each other and adapt when we need to. And we love to learn from each other. So if someone has had, to your earlier point, if they've had a really bad experience with a SME, hey, let's learn from this. What can we do differently going into our other projects? So it's definitely a team effort. And yes, we do have the formal check-ins, but we try to get that real-time feedback as much as we can.
And I would say too, this idea, it strikes me that collaboration is clearly built into your process. Again, that we all know how important that is for creativity, innovation, things like that. But it sounds like it's really a part of, the value-based system, that I'm now coining your project management system. But that's a part of it too, right? It's
patent pending.
It's, teamwork and collaboration is also a huge part of it. And I know that sounds sort of, maybe that's obvious, but it's not really, because we end up in very busy roles like a project management or an L&D team role. You end up in silos sometimes, right? Just to get the work done, just to meet the end deadline. So building that in is actually something you have to be very, very conscious about, I would think.
I love that you picked up on that, Beth, because as I was coming into this role and Laurie approached me about, this opportunity, I had a luxury that most people don't. Project management didn't exist on the team. So I got to be a part of building it, what it looked like, especially majority of our team had never worked with a project manager before. So there wasn't a lot of expectation as far as, well, this is how it's been done for 5 years or 10 years. And so as I really thought about how do I want to set this up or approach it, the people focused was my number one thing. I really tried to look back at just experience that I've had. And to me, it's very similar to a lot of leadership principles that you hear. If someone tries to come in and say, this is the way I do something and you all are going to meet me where I'm at, right? Like I'm a manager. This is how I manage. You have to adapt to me. Typically, that's not going to be ideal. A lot of people will get frustrated. They won't buy into what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Well, that completely translates to project management. And I think a lot of project managers tend to get comfortable in that because it's easier for them, right? They have a way of doing it. And so regardless of who they're working with or what team they're working with or what project they're working on, they are going to do the same thing over and over and over. But a lot of times when people hear of a project manager, it's not always the most positive experience. A lot of times, oh my gosh, they hound me for this, or, mm-hmm. Sometimes it can have a negative association. And I really, really, really wanted to make sure that I could avoid that as much as I could. So from day one with the team, I really did stand behind my role is not to tell you when or how to execute on your project. I am here to set you up for success and to best support you so that we can have the most high quality, efficient product, but we are in this together. I'm not here to tell you what to do or how to do it. Let's work together. Let's partner together. And that's really what I try to keep front of mind when I am partnering with our consultants. So as we are planning these projects, I will definitely lead the conversation with timeline of, okay, here's our end date. We need to work backwards, but it's really, okay, realistic. What is a good timeline for you on this? Okay, if that's going to take you 2 weeks, okay, then we're going to have to be a little tighter on this one, right? But it's a conversation and it's definitely a partnership. I really have tried to focus on the support approach versus me just dictating certain things to them.
Absolutely. And that comes through. I mean, I feel like, we have a partnership, and the experience of working with your team always feels collaborative, always feels like a partnership with an end goal in mind. Laurie, do you have any advice for anyone who maybe doesn't have quite the well-oiled machine that you've got running? How to get into all this? I mean, we talked about a lot, right? We talked about process. We talked about automation. We talked about consistency. We talked about treating SMEs the right way. It's hard to wrap it all up, but do you have any pieces of advice that you might offer somebody who's been impressed with this conversation and would like to achieve something similar?
Yeah, just get a Samantha.
Okay, done.
Or a velvet hammer.
Yes. So in a bumper sticker, I would say start small, fail fast.
Tell me what that means.
Yeah, if I were to double click into that, it would say, pull your team together. And if you don't think you can build all of this, because it's a lot, right? And we are building as we go. I want to make sure that's clear. Samantha mentioned, hey, we could have rolled out something new or something updated within a quarter. We didn't start this with all the pieces. We started with an intake form that fed a project queue, that fed a dashboard. That's where we started. And then we continued to fold in elements and build things out as we went. Now we have this whole ecosystem of project management tools and resources and visualizations. Now, if I were to start from scratch without a project manager on my team, I'd pull everybody together and I'd take a more diagnostic approach. Right? Let's pull everyone into a room or a virtual space and just start asking questions around, where are we getting stuck? Where do we have the biggest opportunities to work more efficiently, both internally and externally? Right? Let's really dive into either your most recent project you've completed or where you are right now. Let's start just throwing things up on a wall about where we're getting stuck and identify patterns that stick out as, this is low-hanging fruit. And then I would take the sort of, quadrant of prioritization approach of least effort for biggest impact. So, for example, a classic challenge that most L&D teams face is SMEs, right? Partnering with SMEs, getting responses in a timely way that are what you're looking for. Because sometimes you do get a response within the deadline that you've set, but it's not thorough or it's not complete. And so I would start with, okay, well, what are we doing to prime the pump with our SMEs? Is there a way we can templatize this, either through a kickoff call or through an email that just says, or even a job aid? We have a flyer. Hi, you're a SME. Here's what your role entails. And it's fun. It's colorful. It's not just a bunch of bullets on a Word document. It's like, congratulations. You've been selected to partner with us. We need your expertise. You can also think about your templates, if you have one or if you need one, for requesting feedback from SMEs. So one of the ways that we're people focused and nimble is trying to figure out what the best way is to get feedback from our SMEs. We do have a template for asynchronous feedback. It has a subject line that says action requested by and the date right there in the subject line, and then a colon and the name of the deliverable. And then we have a standard greeting and opener with context of what this is, and then very targeted feedback questions. We are looking for feedback on the information specifically. What's missing that needs to be here? What's here that we need to take out? And what's here that we need to change? We just want them focused on those things. And then it's 1, 2, 3. Answer those questions. That's it. Don't tell us you don't like this shade of blue. Don't tell us you don't like this interaction, right? Focus Fox is what we say on our team. And we do a little symbol with our hand. Focus Fox on just these questions. And here's the link to the thing. And let us know if you have questions. So you could just take that email approach of how do we get them to deliver the feedback that we need when we need it and the kind of feedback that we're requesting. We even give them examples of what good feedback looks like in that email template. Yeah, this ain't our first rodeo. And then if they're not responsive to that, right? Even if Samantha has wielded her velvet hammer and it hasn't produced results, which is rare, but it happens, we can be proactive, send them a Teams message. Hey, I know you're swamped. I'm just going to find some time for us to connect and talk about this. I think that might be easier. What do you think? And then even if someone just likes it, that's our go ahead to throw, a 25-minute meeting on the calendar, record it, and take them through. So in that way, we're very open to, again, what works for that person, how we can meet the moment with them and get what we need.
You're putting a little piece of silk over the velvet hammer just to make it,
That's it. Yeah. So
this metaphor keeps going.
Yeah. So, that's the start small. The fail fast is, hey, if you're trying this in earnest for, weeks and it's not yielding results, stop. Pull everybody back into the room. You don't have to wait, like Samantha said, for a quarterly check and pull everybody in the room and say, hey, I don't see any productivity. I don't see any increase in, for example, SME engagement to continue with this example. What can we do? What can we refine? What are your ideas, team, on how we can potentially either update what we have pushed out, or let's blow up the room with a brand new approach and see what we can do. And to Samantha's point, getting everyone's buy-in, giving everyone a seat at that table to talk about a process that works for them, especially as folks who are either, consulting, producing the content, or both. That's going to give you the adoption, and that's going to turn them into the evangelists that you want for your process.
This is incredible advice that you're both giving, and I think everyone listening has now had their project management game upped considerably. Your energetic and passion for project management is completely contagious, so can't thank you enough for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for letting us geek out and talk about our favorite topic.
Anytime.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Laurie. It was a pleasure. And I've actually taken notes on the podcast because I'm always learning from you guys. And I love the work that we get to do with you. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Well, the feeling is mutual, Beth.
Yeah,
we love working
Beth.
with you too. Don't ever leave us.
Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Beth, no wonder you enjoy working with Laurie and Samantha. They're passionate, they're smart, and I love how focused they are on people and not just process.
Yeah, that was a great conversation. And I have to say, I think my big takeaway is really the human element to project management. So I'm going to keep that in mind for every project moving forward.
Well, thanks. So they definitely enjoy working with you. So thanks for bringing them onto the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks, Susan.
And special thanks to our guests from Penske, Laurie Strauss and Samantha Thompson. If you have an idea for a topic or guest, please reach out to us at poweredbylearning@davinci.com. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to Powered by Learning wherever you listen to your podcasts.